But I have had the misfortune of teaching both environmental law and the FDA law, and the level of public ignorance and disgrace in these statutes is simply too much. Pam said earlier on, with respect to Wickard and Philbin, just get over it. I can't get over it. That's what... And let me give you a specific story as to why I cannot. When the FDA was founded in 1906, it could not regulate the manufacture of drugs within the states. It only got that power in 1938. And Peter was talking about the level of progress, and I'm going to talk about insulin as one of these particular items. Insulin was a drug invented by a man who could only be described as a constrained lunatic, a man named Banting, who worked in Canada and eventually got the support of Eli Lilly, which was a great company at the time, in doing this. This is the progress of this. He figured out, basically in a nightmarish dream, what to do. He was relegated to a basement laboratory. Every single production system that he made, he managed to screw up. He finally got the formula, then promptly forgot it. But nonetheless, from the time that he first got this idea to the time that insulin was on the market was a grand total of less than 3 years. First 10 people who took it, most of them died, some of them lived. By the time you got to 1930, it was in broad spread and general use. Now, what's the gain Peter was talking about? Well, let me mention what the treatment for diabetes was in 1921. It was slow starvation. Essentially, you slow down metabolic processes, you reduced a normal woman of 120 pounds to 50 pounds, and then she croaked. The woman who is most known for this was a woman named Elizabeth Hughes. She was the daughter of Charles Evans Hughes. She was down to 49 pounds at the age of 15. When they finally got insulin into her, literally it was like Lazarus rising from the dead. She lived to the age of 73. She started to gain weight. She married by 1930, had several children, and managed to self-administer. The FDA had only one role, or the government had only one role to play in this story, and that was when they tried to get pure ethanol in order to do the isolation. It was barred by prohibition, and it took the Rockefeller family to get some influence so as to allow them to do this, because the government regulators thought that methanol would do just as well as ethanol, and so why is it that you have to take something that's booze? Now, the basic position on dynamic production is as follows. That one invention, which took 3 years, contributed more to human beings and their welfare than every single advance with respect to diabetes in the 90 or so years that has followed. Those have all been very important, but they're an order of magnitude difference. What you have to do in technology is understand that the first generation of simple-minded truths gets you a huge gain, and the next things you 10 times as much and get 1/10 the amount. What the FDA has done is killed that cycle. And it is done so because of this notion that they somehow or other are going to protect people from the only things that will save them, and because they come with the view that unless you could prove to our satisfaction it's safe, individuals cannot make judgments. In fact, with here's where Justice Griffiths and I have a violent disagreement. I mean, he wrote this elegant opinion on Abigail's Alliance, which says people don't have a right to use a drug, which passes a Phase 1 title. What the question was whether or not you can essentially wreck the FDA by giving it only the power to control trivial types of activities, after which the voluntary networks of private organizations, physicians, international work will give you 10 times as much information on an absolute updated basis, so forth. This is essentially, as far as I can see, one of the long-standing public disgraces which causes huge losses with respect to innovation, huge amounts of gratuitous suffering, requires companies to say absolutely nothing lest there be retaliation. That's what Ted referred to. And it's all the patient groups that have to go against all the professionals who know how to do quote-unquote science, most of whom are using techniques that are 60 years old and don't even understand what they're about. That's what's at stake in the larger issue about regulation. And unless we fix that thing up with the FDA and the EPA and all the drugs on chemicals and so forth, we are consigned essentially to long-term mediocrity. The rest of the world is a little better than we are on some of these issues, worse on others. But this is the central issue of our time, and we have so locked ourselves in, starting with Wickard and Filbert and carrying through with this sort of fiendish regulatory program in which everybody knows best for what individuals should do except the individuals themselves. I've just mentioned one thing. My late mother-in-law, she was a got myasthenia gravis. And this woman, by the time she figured out what it was, knew more about that disease than most of the physicians who treated her, and constantly gave her all the information going out. One of the things that you do when you stop this kind of information is all the Hayekian knowledge that comes from the accumulation of the spirit, there's a system going upward, is killed in favor of a bunch of bureaucrats who only know how to read charts, which they don't understand anyhow. This is what we have to fight about. That's why Wicked and Filburn is important. The individual mandate in the grand scheme of things is a piddly, unimportant, insignificant, stupid kind of regulation. What really matters is the long-term flow of technology, and that's what we're killing off. So to Pam, I can't forget about it. Thank you.